You've been told that plants are the healthiest thing that you can eat, but what if that wasn't the full story? Plant-based diets have skyrocketed in popularity, but there's a dark side that no one's talking about. You've been told that plants are the healthiest thing that you can eat, but what if that wasn't the full story? Let's go ahead and break down what happens when you swap animal foods for a plant-only plate and whether it really helps with weight, with insulin, and metabolic health. Hello and welcome back to the Obesity Project. My name is Dr. Mark Shankman. I'm an oral and maxillofacial surgeon that has dedicated myself and my social media platform to talk about obesity, insulin resistance, and metabolic health. Today, episode number 29, The Dark Side of Plant-Based Diets. Are they really healthier? So let's dive right into this topic. So let's talk about the rise of the plant-based movement. Now, before I get into this, I do want to let you know, for full transparency, if you watched any of my videos, I am currently on a carnivore diet. Carnivore diet is certainly one extreme. The plant-based or vegan diet is sort of the opposite. I tell everybody when I talk to people, talk to my patients, I talk to folks that have an interest in this topic. When I talk to them, I tell them that I'm not actually here to promote any one particular diet. Even though I'm on carnivore diet, it was a personal choice. I think what diet plan you use is really based on what your personal likes and dislikes are and what your goals are. And I've talked about this in other videos that there's a whole host of different low carbohydrate diets that you can choose from. You have to figure out what it is that sort of fits best with your lifestyle and what your goals are. Are your goals simply weight loss? Are your goals heart health? Are your goals reversal of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes? All of these things play a part. They make a difference in terms of which diet you choose. And I've talked about a number of different diets. We're going to talk specifically about plant-based today, but I want you to know I'm not in favor of or against any particular diet. I just want you to be well informed about what's going on in that diet. So let's talk about the rise of the plant-based movement. This was certainly fueled by environmental concerns, and I do have a company called Rentec Global Solutions that is renewable energy technologies and decreasing carbon footprint. So I'm very sensitive to problems in the environment, but it comes from environmental concerns, ethical arguments, and marketing from big food. Vegan and vegetarian products now dominate the health food aisles, but there's one problem with them. They're all ultra processed foods, and we'll get into that in just a moment. So, like an example of this is the Impossible Burger, which contains over 21 ingredients, including soy protein isolates and seed oils. So, there was a study by Montero et al. In 2019 that showed that plant-based food classification system highlights how ultra-processed plant foods contribute to obesity and chronic disease. So there is some scientific basis to what I'm saying. I'm not just here to blast the plant-based diet. There are, as you may be aware, and certainly if you're on a plant-based diet or particularly a vegan diet, you need to be aware that there are definitely some nutritional deficiencies in plant-based diets. So there are some key nutrition or nutrients that are often lacking in this diet. So plant-based diets have a lot of nutrients in them, but you have to eat so much of the vegetable to gain adequate levels of some of these nutrients that it's really hard to do. And so some of the key nutrients often lacking in a plant-based diet, vitamin B12, iron, so non-heme iron, so non-meat based iron is poorly absorbed in the human gut. So omega-3s are absent from a plant-based diet. So things such as EPA and DHA are hard to come by and somewhat impossible to come by for certain of those omega-3s. Zinc, choline, creatine, and retinol, which is the sort of precursor to vitamin A. So some of the consequences to these missing nutrients are anemia, some cognitive decline, poor muscle recovery, and hormonal imbalances. There was a study back in 2016 by Molina et al. It's a position paper by the Academy of Nutrition and Diabetics that acknowledges the higher risk of nutrient deficiencies in strict plant-based diets. So, not saying plant-based diets are bad. You just have to be aware there are certain nutrients that are missing and have to be supplemented. So, you have to keep in mind that supplementation is necessary on a plant-based diet. Now, that's not to say that other diets don't have supplement requirements as well. Like in the carnivore diet, we do have to supplement with electrolytes early on because of the sort of keto flu, or the loss of fluid from the lack of carbohydrates and the loss of electrolytes as a result of that. A diuresis process goes on. So not to say that all diets don't have some sort of problem with them or some sort of nutrient deficiency, but in my opinion, this is just my opinion, the carnivore diet has the least. But let's talk about our plant-based diet. So there are some anti-nutrients in plants. So plants do produce these defensive chemicals or protective mechanisms from being eaten. And these are things like oxalates, lectins, phytates, goitrogens, so sort of androgen-like products. So let's take each one of these by themselves. So oxalates are typically found in things like spinach and almonds. They can cause kidney stones, and they can create a lot of inflammation. And if we're trying to reduce inflammation in the body, these oxalates are definitely counterproductive. We've got lectins that are in things like beans and legumes. They can influence or affect gut permeability and can be some autoimmune triggers. Plus, we have these phytates, which are found in grains and legumes, which do bind minerals like calcium, iron, and zinc, which then impairs digestion, nutrient absorption, and gut health. So there was a study by Leiner in 1994 that explored lectin-induced inflammation and gastrointestinal damage in animal studies, showing that it increased inflammation and promoted gastrointestinal damage. So again, all of these things, can be found in studies to prove that there are some deficiencies. So let's talk about a little bit about carb load and insulin response. So most plant-based diets are high in carbohydrates, even if they're complex carbohydrates. So, as we've mentioned many times before, carbohydrates by themselves are not necessarily bad. Fruits and vegetables have their place if taken in moderation, but plant-based diets are high in carbs. And so some of them have a high glycemic load, which can create a chronically elevated insulin level, which then contributes to insulin resistance and contributes to fat storage and type 2 diabetes. So vegan diets often rely heavily on grains and legumes and starchy vegetables. All of these things can contribute to blood sugar spikes, although if they're eaten in a whole food manner, those spikes are somewhat mediated, but you can get blood sugar spikes, especially in insulin-resistant individuals. And there was a study by Letwig and Ebeling in 2018 that discussed the glycemic load and its effect on body weight regulation. That goes back to this concept of blood sugar spiking. All right, so let's talk about the ultra-processed vegan problem. So many plant-based diets are foods that are heavily processed. And we've talked about many times leading up to this video how heavily processed foods are something we want to avoid. And so soy protein isolates, seed oils, which I've shot an entire other video on the damaging effects of seed oils, and other artificial additives are pretty common in these ultra-processed foods. And these ultra-processed vegan foods can spike inflammation, can disrupt satiety, and create and increase disease risk. So there was a study by Hall et al. In 2019. It was an NIH controlled trial which showed that ultra-processed foods lead to higher caloric intake and weight gain versus unprocessed diets. So even though these are plant-based, they are still heavily processed, ultra refined, and those can contribute to many problems, including weight gain and metabolic disease. All right, so now let's get into the mental side of things, mental health and hormonal effects. There are certainly deficiencies in things like choline, B12, and DHA, which are linked to brain fog, to depression, and poor focus. And so, vegan men in particular may experience lower testosterone due to low cholesterol intake, which, of course, testosterone is made from cholesterol. Cholesterol is a precursor to the creation of all sex hormones. So, men and women the precursor is cholesterol. So there was a study by Sanders et al. In 2003, which demonstrated that low plasma B12 levels in vegans were linked to some neurological symptoms. So again, we have to be cautious. I want you to be educated. I'm not here to blast the vegan diet. I know it sounds like I kind of am, but we just have to supplement in the right way, and we can prevent many of these issues. So again, like I said, it sort of sounds like I'm blasting plant-based diets, but are there benefits? Are there benefits to plant-based eating? And yes, the answer is, or yes, there is some short-term benefit, which may include lower LDL cholesterol. However, I got to tell you, especially coming from a carnivore-based diet, I don't believe that LDL is the villain that the American Medical Society makes it out to be. There's many aspects of LDL which have been blown out of proportion, but there's no question a plant-based diet will lower your LDL cholesterol. And there is certainly some evidence that LDL cholesterol can be bad. Now, the problem with LDL cholesterol, without getting off on a giant side tangent, the medical profession tests your LDL and looks at total LDL levels. They do monitor HDL to LDL levels, which is important, but they're not talking about the ratio of triglycerides to HDL, which is far more predictive of cardiovascular disease than LDL levels. And LDL is actually only damaging when the particle sizes are very small and the numbers very great. If your particle sizes are larger, they're more buoyant, they're less likely to cause plaques in the vessels that contribute to heart disease. Whereas if your LDL particles are very small, they're very, very inflammatory. They can get into those plaques very easily and cause damage and create cardiovascular disease. So I got to say, as far as lowering LDL cholesterol goes, as in these plant-based diets, we have to look at what the particle size is, how many of them there are, to really determine whether the LDL is a cardiovascular risk. If you look at, and I've mentioned this before, if you look at centenarian studies, studies of people who live to over 100 years old, many of them, if not most of them, have had elevated LDL levels, and many longevity gurus and people interested in creating longevity believe that LDL is actually a longevity marker more than it is a cardiovascular marker. How do you live to 100 years old, have elevated LDL levels, and say that it's a cardiovascular risk? So again, we have to be very specific and look at LDL in a very different way than typically is measured in the medical profession. So some of the short-term benefits that I mentioned, lowering LDL cholesterol, other benefits, increased fiber intake. There is evidence that fiber does provide some protective mechanisms. Now, I do not believe that fiber is an essential nutrient. It's actually not a nutrient. You don't digest it. The bacteria in your gut digest it, which can help you, but also can create some gas and some flatulence and some GI disturbance. But no question that there is a benefit to fiber when you're eating carbohydrates. So without a carbohydrate in your diet, I do not believe fiber is necessary. But when you're eating a high carbohydrate diet, or even in whole food or complex carbohydrate form, there is definitely a benefit to increasing your fiber intake. So if you have low fiber but you have no carbs, I believe that's okay. But if you're eating a carbohydrate, you know, if you're eating carbohydrates in their whole food form, then you definitely need to make sure you're taking enough fiber along with it. But again, if you're eating it in whole food form, you're pretty much getting that fiber along with those carbohydrates. Um, and then there is a short-term weight loss benefit due to the lower calorie density of plant-based foods. And so you're going to decrease your caloric intake. But this is often unsustainable and can lead to malnutrition over time without careful planning. And that's the important part. I'm not here to tell you that, plant-based diet is going to kill you, that you're going to be, suffer from malnutrition. I'm saying that over time, you can lead to malnutrition if you're not really carefully planning your meal, supplementing with those omega-3s, supplementing for some of these electrolytes that are missing from the plant-based diet. There was a study by Barnard et al. In 2009, which demonstrated that plant-based diets can reduce, hemoglobin A1C in diabetics in the short term. So there is certainly some benefit. They do seem to be short-term benefits over long-term benefits, but there is definitely some benefit to plant-based diet. So the balance takeaway, let's kind of talk about, some other aspects. So not all plant-based diets are equal. It depends on what you're eating. If eat whole foods and well-planned diets, supplementing with B12 and omega-3 supplementation, this can work for some people and can be very effective. In terms of overall health, maybe a little bit of weight loss. But if you're trying to reverse obesity and you're trying to become more insulin resist or sorry, not become more insulin resistance, decrease insulin resistance, then most people really need to eat more protein, lower carb intake, and nutrient dense animal foods become increasingly important. So carnivore diets, keto diets, and low carb diets all often outperform vegan diets in metabolic studies. Now, metabolic studies. I'm here to tell you that I do think and I do believe that ketogenic diets or very, very low carbohydrate diets with animal products in them are more efficient and more effective at reversing obesity and insulin resistance, particularly the insulin resistance piece and metabolic disorder. There was a study by Hallberg et al. In 2018 that demonstrated that low carb ketogenic diets did reverse type 2 diabetes in over 50 participants in only a 1 year period. So that's a tremendous um, reversal. It's actually a cure for type 2 diabetes, and over 50% of them actually reversed and cured their type 2 diabetes at the 1 year mark. Going longer could even increase those numbers. So, have you been considering a plant-based diet for your health? Think again, because you need to make informed choices, not just popular ones. This isn't about gurus. This isn't about people promoting because they have some sort of incentive to get you on a plant-based diet, or they have some, sort of religious or philosophical beliefs that you don't share. If you share those, fine, that's perfectly fine. This is a personal choice. I'm not here to dissuade you from that, but you have to make informed choices, not just popular ones. So drop a comment down below if you've ever tried a vegan or vegetarian diet and how you felt. Did you feel better or did you feel worse? And share this with someone who needs to hear the other side of the story. If someone is a true vegan, they need to be well informed so that they're making good choices, they're supplementing properly, and they're doing what's best for their health. And I'm here to tell you that the food you eat does affect your hormones, your brain, and your metabolism. So absolutely choose wisely. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of love from the plant-based diet people, the vegans of the world. It's okay. I don't mind the hate. as long as we're continuing the conversation, as long as we're continuing to educate people. I'm also going to do a video on the inherent problems with carnivore. I'm going to give both sides of the story. So I'm not here to tell you what diet you should choose. I'm here to tell you to choose wisely, choose educated, choose by looking at the research, looking at the studies, and looking at what is best for you, what goals you're trying to accomplish. And I'm not really sure that this is the best thing. Um, and the reason I chose carnivore was because animal meats are high nutrient dense foods, whereas plant-based diets are really low nutrient dense foods, and you have to eat a lot of them, and they come with a lot of additional side problems that you have to be aware of. So I appreciate your time. Like, share, and comment. Make sure to subscribe and make sure to share this with those vegans that you know and bring on the hate. I know it's coming. Take care. Have a good one.